Before I get into anything specific, I just want to acknowledge that the background footage isn't film clips, but is actually footage from the Mortal Kombat games throughout the years. I went with this decision just because I didn't feel like dealing with any automated copyright checks or anything like that. So I just watched the new Mortal Kombat movie yesterday, and I gotta say, honestly, I fucking liked it. I was really surprised. We ended up having this sort of situation, and I've mentioned this to some people on the build-up to Godzilla vs. Kong, where there's not really a reason you can't just make a decent, straightforward, solid movie based off of an established brand. And what I mean by that is, say in Godzilla vs. Kong, which I'll be talking about soon, they have all this bullshit with the little girl having a human connection with Kong and this and that, which is fine if you want to do it, but if you're gonna do it well. If you can't do it well, don't do it at all. Just have a very straightforward, not necessarily basic, but you don't have to do something. You're not out for Oscars with your big monster movie or your Mortal Kombat movie. So here in this movie, you've got the descendant of Scorpion who was killed by Sub-Zero at the beginning in the past, and then you flash forward to the present, and he is a dilapidated, out of his prime MMA fighter with a family. And that's pretty much it. You know, he has a family, you learn their names, and then people come and try to attack his family. He gets swooped away and taught a whole bunch of Mortal Kombat stuff, and then he saves his family, and the movie ends. There's not really all this bullshit. It's not showing like his daughter secretly having a connection with the bloodlines and this and that, and there's not all this extra fluff and shit that everybody just feels like they have to do for some reason. Overall, I thought this movie was fucking awesome. It's obviously story-wise not stacking up to anything, anything at all, any decent movies. There's a million, probably literally 1 million movies out there with a better, more deep, and more complex storyline than this. But you don't go to Mortal Kombat to watch it for the storyline. It should have an okay and decently simple to follow storyline, and I think that's a criticism here, is if you're not familiar with the Mortal Kombat franchise going into this, it's probably incredibly hard to follow. In fact, I wouldn't even say probably, because I watched it with my girlfriend who doesn't know really anything about Mortal Kombat, and they didn't really explain anything. They just introduce characters and you're kind of expected to know them, or they do one little throwaway line like, oh yeah, I was in Special Forces, or something like that. But if you're a fan of the game, you know their whole backstory, what they're all about, their motivations, at least on a surface level, whether they're good or bad. For someone like my girlfriend, or really anybody who hasn't dedicated at least a little bit of their time playing some of the games and learning a little bit of the lore. But where this movie does shine is its genuinely surprisingly effective special effects. And what I mean by that is, personally, we're getting to the point where you're sort of desensitized towards special effects. I think eventually we're going to see this move away from CGI, where a movie not having a ton of CGI is going to be a selling point for it. I don't know if this is the next 5 years or the next 10 years, but I digress. My point is, some of the most basic shots you see in these movies today, like if you were watching Godzilla vs. Kong, you could pick almost any of the fight scenes out of that movie, and if you were to play a 30-second clip of that to someone in like 2010 or 2009, it would have blown their fucking balls off. I mean, they would have been blown out of the water. The effects are phenomenal. But you show that to someone today, and that's just industry standard. That's the norm. That's like taking a practical effect in like Indiana Jones movie in the 80s and then just taking it and showing it to somebody. They'd be like, okay. But I think the CGI is actually quite impressive. There's a lot of cool stuff they did with it that made it feel kind of fresh, some stuff you don't see too often. Like, I feel like we tend to see ice effects in more cartoony stuff like Frozen, and not usually in things with real actors. And some of the effects of the ice growing and just kind of the way the crystals form, and when the ice gets smashed, the way there's that little bit of dust versus the bigger pieces, you could just see the simulations are really strong, and it looked really well done. There was also another part specifically that I noticed when Sonya Blade comes out and blasts a hole through somebody. It shows the hole in their body with their spine going up through it, kind of cartoony, like a video game. And there's this edge lighting glistening on the inside of his like gore hole, and the way they lit it, where the inside's very dark and there's that shiny light that just makes you know it's real wet in there and like warm and nasty. I just found it super effective. It was subtle, but it was a really well done effect, and that kind of just pulled me into it. The choreography is really solid, and there's a lot of cool little details in the fights. Like when Jax first starts fighting Sub-Zero and he fires his shotgun and Sub-Zero freezes it, you could see the individual shotgun pellets coming out and being frozen off the initial blast. Also, the way Jax lost his fucking arms was amazing. They showed it in the trailer. They showed a lot of the good stuff in the trailer, but it was fucking awesome. It was effective. It looked nasty. It looked painful as hell. The fight choreography seemed pretty solid. The cuts weren't too quick. There was some fast-paced editing in some places, but there were also slower-paced segments where there were pretty steady shots when you could just see the action very clearly, and I feel that when it did cut quickly, it did an effective job at tracking your eyes the correct way and just kind of keeping you invested. It seemed pretty easy to understand what was happening, and not necessarily that they were just cutting quickly because the choreography wasn't good and they were trying to distract you from it or not let you see it. There was a lot of good references to the game. Obviously, we had Kung Lao's fatality where he threw the hat on the floor and cut someone in half with it. We had Kano ripping out someone's heart while it was still beating, saying Kano wins. Lots lots of line references like flawless victory, stuff like that. I haven't looked too much into any reviews or anything because I didn't want them to influence my opinion, so I haven't seen really what people think about this, but I actually thought Kano was pretty effective as the comic relief character. I'd say most of his humor actually landed for me, and even if I didn't laugh out loud, I didn't find it overly grating. There was definitely some stuff where the casting was off, and it's like this guy doesn't really seem as much of a badass mercenary as he makes himself out to be, but at the same time, I really like the casting because I like what the guy brought to the character. I mean, some of the lines got a genuine laugh out of Alexis and I. Like when his kidnapper asked him for help, asked him where something important was, and he said, hey, grab a pen, write this down, write this down. Get fucked. That shit was hilarious. The whole time I was waiting for Goro to come out, because obviously Goro is fucking awesome. He was a major part of the 1990s Mortal Kombat movie, and I wasn't disappointed. I mean, he was what I was expecting, a big CGI guy with 4 arms. It looked solid, the muscle looked tight, the skin texture looked good, the lighting looked solid. He looked okay. I just wish we had a little more, I don't know, he doesn't feel grounded. You know he's CGI, you know he's a cartoon, you know it takes you out of it. Not that it's a super realistic universe, but I'm not a huge fan of fully CG characters. But his death was fucking badass. He got cut open, his entrails and shit spilled out, hand cut off. It was definitely a fitting way to fuck him up. The film was actually reasonably brutal as well, based off the source material. I guess the directors said they got pretty close to an NC-17 rating a couple times, because what you can get away with in a film versus a video game is a lot different, because one is a cartoon, obviously fully animated, and the other one, even though the gore itself is animated, you're seeing it happen to real subjects, so they're a little more strict with the ratings, which I didn't find it overly gruesome. There's plenty of straight up horror movies that go way more over the top. This is action violence, so you just kind of see the guy get cut in half, and people go, ooh wee. It's not like a long drawn out scene of somebody being like, fuck, oh my god, Jesus Christ, I'm dying slowly of blood loss, fucking kill me. Like, it's quick, and it's very clearly a reference to the game. It's cartoony, not in the sense that it's overly cartoony and not entertaining, but in the sense that it's very obviously an homage to a fucking video game and not something that's meant to be real. I was a big fan of the cinematography as a whole. I thought it was pretty simple and straightforward, well done, but I liked the colors, costumes were decent. I was waiting the whole time for Scorpion to come out, and I wasn't really disappointed when he came out during the end. He was suitingly badass. My biggest disappointment would honestly be where this film sits, and what I'm guessing is probably planned to be a trilogy. This whole thing was basically just a commercial for the second one. Like, when I paused the movie to get up and go grab something and saw there was only 12 minutes left, I literally thought to myself, like, that's crazy. They haven't even defeated the villain yet, because they don't defeat the villain. Shang Tsung is in this entire movie, and I was expecting Shang Tsung to be defeated and the actual Mortal Kombat tournament to happen, but it is now apparent that this is a semi-prequel, semi-not prequel commercial build-up, test the waters for when they really blow their load and do a big movie where they're actually going to have all the characters, or more characters like Johnny Cage and stuff in it, and not just like the 7 they chose for this one. But yeah, Shang Tsung just, I mean, nothing happens. Sub-Zero dies, and then Shang Tsung just goes, I'll be back for the sequel, hee 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 hee, and then like runs away, tiptoes away. So it almost feels like nothing really happened overarching plot-wise. The main plot thing that happened was this guy, Cole, realized, the main character Cole, realized that he was descended from another guy, and they defeated Sub-Zero. Like, that was the plot of the movie. Basically, Sub-Zero got defeated. Shang Tsung is still at large. Mortal Kombat tournament hasn't happened. Earthrealm isn't saved. All the characters aren't together and introduced. So it pretty much functioned as like a 2-hour-long movie trailer. A good-ass, entertaining, thrilling movie trailer with a lot of fan service, but a movie trailer nonetheless. I hate looking at the reviews for this shit, because it has like a 60% or something, and then you look at the audience ratings and it's like 90, because that's exactly the point. These critics are reviewing it like they're trying to stack this shit up against The Godfather, Taxi Driver, $1 Million Baby. It's just not gonna happen. It's fucking Mortal Kombat. Half the movie is CGI. Here's what you need to do. You sit down, you say, did I get bored? Did I understand the story? Was the CGI good? Was the fighting good? Was the cinematography decent? The answers to all those questions are yes. It's a fun springtime action movie for fans of Mortal Kombat and their girlfriends, basically. You sit down, if you have even the slightest little bit of love for Mortal Kombat, you're gonna have a good time. If you like action and decent effects, you're just gonna watch people get sliced up and cut in half and do backflips and shoot fucking fire and lasers and shit. That's what it is. It has a very simple human story other than fighting. Someone's getting revenge for someone else. I mean, this person killed this person and this person's mad about it. It's basically where it goes. This guy has a wife and daughter that you see for 3 minutes of total runtime. All you need to know is he doesn't want his wife and daughter to die. They do what they need to do. They do it pretty quick. I just wish that they actually accomplished more. It didn't just tease you and leave you at a fucking cliffhanger for the next one, where they go, see, you thought we were actually going to show you a movie, but nope, you fucking idiot. You just watched a 2-hour-long film trailer, bitch. But yeah, watch Mortal Kombat.